Will share his experience, strength, and hope for approximately 45 minutes. We ask out of respect for our speaker that everyone remain seated until our speaker is finished. It is my pleasure to introduce our speaker for the evening, Jimmy R.
All right, that's awesome. My name is Jimmy Roush. I'm an alcoholic. And thanks to divine intervention, strong sponsorship, and the actions that I take and continue to take in Alcoholics Anonymous, I've been sober since August 14th, 2006. And I'm very grateful for that. Congratulations to everybody that just celebrated a birthday, a couple 20 years, a couple 1 years. It's awesome. And welcome to the newcomers. I mean, there's a lot of newcomers in here, and I love seeing that. I hope you guys come all the way into Alcoholics Anonymous, sit all the way down, and stick around here long enough to let the program work in your life the same way it's worked in our lives, right? It's the best deal in town. You know, it's the biggest group in the world that nobody ever wanted to be a member of, but it's it's the best deal in town, the best thing that I ever found for my life. I was talking to a gentleman in the back, and we were saying, if we're going to have a disease, we might as well enjoy it, right? And I look around here and I see a lot of people enjoying this, and I absolutely insist on enjoying life today, and I've been given a life beyond anything that I could have ever imagined. John, thanks for asking me to come up. Really appreciate it. Me and John go back some years, and thanks for not asking me to come up when it was 9 degrees. But yeah, I came up from the valley, and I love Alcoholics Anonymous. I always start with saying that. I absolutely love Alcoholics Anonymous and everything about it. It was kind of tough with the COVID, and nobody was meeting in person. What I missed the most was the music of Alcoholics Anonymous, right? And the music is the laughter and the joking and the talking and the chattering before the meeting and after the meeting, right? And I didn't get that, and I absolutely missed that, and it's great to be back in meetings in person. So, like I said, I've been sober since August 14th, 2006, and I'm forever grateful for that. Anybody who knew me prior to that date is forever grateful for that as well. By the time I got to you guys, I was not a fun-loving, happy-go-lucky drunk, right? Like that wasn't my story. I was an absolute monster, terrorized everybody that got in my way, and anybody that tried to help me along the way. And by the time I showed up in August of 2006, I had literally nobody. Nobody wanted anything to do with me, family, friends, relatives. The only ones that were calling me was the probation officer, because I kept not showing up to see him. So I carried this around with me, and I was speaking at a treatment center years ago, and one of the girls there asked me, she says, you talked about the phenomenon of craving, you talked about the mental obsession, but you didn't really talk about, bless you, the spiritual malady. And so I kind of started doing some research on the spiritual malady, and so I went on and Googled spiritual malady and started finding stuff, and I found this, and I thought this was awesome. It says, what is the spiritual malady? It says, negative feelings and emotions, remorse, guilt, shame, shattered self-esteem, self-doubt, even self-loathing, loneliness, alienation, apartness, isolation, depression, and feelings of hopelessness, futility, and a pervasive sense of meaninglessness of life. And I was like, wow, that describes me to a T, right? And then after I said to myself, that describes me to a T, I read the next sentence that says, I found the above description in a psychology magazine a few years ago. It is the definition for a psychopath. So, while I may or may not have been a psychopath when I showed up here, I definitely had the symptoms, right? And that's the kind of guy that showed up to you guys in August of 2006. So I try not to go into a real long drunkalogue, but there's some stuff that I have to say and some things that I have to share to kind of let you know the guy that you're dealing with. So I got in trouble for shoplifting for the first time when I was 5 years old. I started lying around the same time I started to talk. I may or may not have burnt a field down in my neighborhood when I was 7. I got kicked out of my elementary school after 5th grade. So I was like restless, irritable, and discontent out of the chute, right? Restless, irritable, and discontent out of the chute. So by the time I was 13, I needed a drink, right? And I got that drink when I was 13 years old. Now, anybody who knows me knows that like I fancy myself like a connoisseur of tacos. Like I love tacos. Like I'll search out all the different taco spots and try and find the best taco. And I was thinking about this a while back, that as much as I love tacos, I cannot for the life of me remember the first time I had a taco. Can't remember it. But I can tell you, clear as day, the first time I had a drink. And I can tell you where I was. I was on the bridge on Gravel Hill Road. I'm from Philadelphia. A guy that worked for my dad got a 6-pack, and I remember he came down Gravel Hill Road, met me down there. He's driving a gold Dodge Dart. Supertramp was on the radio, and he handed me out a 6-pack of Miller High Life. And I can picture that 6-pack of Miller High Life like it was yesterday, right? And something happened with that 6-pack of Miller High Life that changed my life forever. And me and my buddies took that Miller High Life, and we went back into the woods, and we sat there and drank a 6-pack. I didn't get drunk. I didn't throw up, but something changed. Something happened, and I liked the effect that was produced by alcohol, and I liked it from the very beginning. I didn't become a daily drinker, like I wasn't the kid that was taking whiskey to school in my Roy Rogers lunchbox or anything like that. But what did happen, though, was I started thinking about it all the time. When am I going to get to do that again? How am I going to get to do that again? And my parents had a garage, or a refrigerator in their garage, and my buddy's parents had refrigerators in their garage, and Mike Stewart's parents had this big ice maker thing, and his dad always had Peel's bottles in there. So whenever we could, we would sneak some beers and stuff from our parents, and I would drink as often as I could. As I got older, I got into high school, started to get a little bit more freedom, and with that little bit more freedom came a little bit more drinking. And I would go out to parties on weekends, and, the whole story, just the typical drinking on the weekends at high school parties, smoking some weed and sniffing a little cocaine. Like me and my buddies would get like a gram of cocaine between 8 of us and think we were doing big things on a Friday night. And but as I got older and I got more freedom, the alcohol increased, right? The drinking increased. I got arrested for the first time when I was 17 years old for drunken disorderly conduct. It was the night before my high school graduation. Got out of jail kind of just in time to make it to the high school graduation, go running up there almost as they were calling my name with a big giant anarchy sign on the top of my graduation cap. Really made my parents proud. Got arrested for the first time when I was 17. Been arrested, got arrested 24 more times after that. I've been arrested 25 times, in and out of county jail, 4 years in prison, 5 DUIs, been to 6 different colleges. I think right now I'm about 8 credits away from being a sophomore. So after the 6th college requested that I not come back, I figured probably college isn't the route for me. So I thought I should get a job. And I got a job with the family business because you can't really, I've been fired from more jobs than I can count. Literally more jobs than I can remember I've been fired from. My record of being fired from a job is like 13 minutes. So I got a job with the family business in Philadelphia. I was living in Arizona at the time, but I figured you can't get fired from the family business, and you can, twice. So I ended up moving back to Arizona after I got fired from the family business the first time. And I met this girl, and I fell in love. And I fell in love with this girl from the beginning, man. She was beautiful. She had a son that was like 9 months old, and he and I hit it off. And I knew I was going to marry this girl. And she didn't want anything to do with me because she had a half a brain. And anyway, I was persistent, and I tricked her into marrying me. We got married in 1991, in February of 1991, and then in March or April of 1991, I got rehired with the family business. This time they were opening a facility in California, so we moved out to California to open the facility out there. We had 2 more daughters, so I have a wife and 3 kids, and I'm still drinking exactly the same way I always did, you know. And they're like, I don't know about you guys, but there were plenty of times that I wanted it to stop, like, and I never knew that it was that first one. I never knew that it was the first one. It would just blow my mind, like, why? All I want to do is have a couple beers. And next thing you know, it's Wednesday, right? And I just wanted to have a couple beers. And I couldn't ever understand why until I showed up to Alcoholics Anonymous. So real quick, here's a story. So when I think about the, we talk about in the book the phenomenon of craving, the drinking even though we don't want to. I get loaded even when I don't want to. Once I start drinking, I cannot predict with any certainty if and when I'm going to stop. And for me, it usually ended up in the back of a police car. So I have whenever I think about that, and if I ever question if I'm an alcoholic, I just go back to this. And I was 20 years old, and I was living in Philadelphia. And my mom's got a family of 10 brothers and sisters. My dad's got a family of 6 brothers and sisters. I have 38 aunts and uncles and like 52 cousins. And I know them all, right? But my grandfather, I was the oldest grandkid on my mom's side, and my grandfather and I had a really cool, like, he loved me. He called me Baby Jimmy till the day he died. And he and I had a great relationship, and he didn't like very many people in the world at all, But he loved Baby Jimmy. So he died when I was 20 years old. And they asked me to be a pallbearer in the funeral. And I said, absolutely, I'd be honored to. That would be great. And the week leading up to the funeral, I started to get feelings. I started to get sad. I started to get mad. I started questioning God, like, why'd you take my grandfather from me, blah, 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 making it all about me. And by the time the day of the funeral rolled around, man, I couldn't take it anymore, and I decided I was going to go to the bar and have a couple drinks just to take the edge off before the funeral. And I went to the bar about 9:30 in the morning, have a couple drinks to take the edge off. And I came out of that bar about 10 o'clock that night, shit-faced drunk, and drank my way right through my grandfather's funeral, never even showed up, right? I didn't go in there to get drunk and miss my grandfather's funeral. I went in there to have a couple drinks to take the edge off. But I'm an alcoholic, and when I take a couple drinks, I cannot predict with any certainty if and when I'm going to stop. And they talk about the mental obsession in the book. So when I was a kid, my favorite show, there's some people in here old enough to remember Batman, like the old school Batman show with Adam West and Cesar Romero. And there's a dude on there called the Penguin, right? He would fly around with an umbrella and stuff like that. So I figured one day that an umbrella would probably function as a parachute. So I climb up on the roof of my garage with my umbrella/parachute and jump off with my umbrella/parachute. And an umbrella does not function at all as a parachute. And I can tell you that I had never in my life been in as much pain as I was in when I landed with that umbrella/parachute. But I can also tell you this, that from that day, I was probably 7, 8 years old. From that day till this day, I have never, ever had a thought of jumping off any roof with any umbrella as a parachute. Like, I've never given it a second thought. I never thought maybe if I did it in the morning time, or maybe if I jumped off the other side, or maybe if I waited till the wind was blowing, or maybe if I jumped off with other people. Like, none of that ever crossed my mind. But every time I drank, it caused me more pain and more suffering than that, and I kept trying to figure out how to do it right. how that I can do this and make it not hurt, how I can make the damn umbrella function as a parachute. And I was never able to figure it out. So now I got a wife and 3 kids, and now I'm drinking and doing everything else that I do, and now I have to hide it. And now I'm sneaking around, and I'm, needless to say, that marriage lasted 3 years. I was living in California. The family business sent me up to San Francisco on a business trip for a trade show. Trade show was Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. I went up on Monday. Trade show was Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. I come home on Friday. I came home on Friday, but it was Friday of the following week. Kind of lost a week. Up in San Francisco, I came home and the house was empty. Everything was gone. Wife, kids, everybody was gone. They were back in Arizona, and that was the end of that. So after that, it wasn't long after that I got fired from the family business for the second time. And at that point, I became basically unemployable. I could get interviews, and I could show up to the interview, and I could interview real well, and I could make you believe about me whatever I wanted you to believe about me, and I can usually get the job. The problem with that for me is once I get the job, they put unrealistic expectations on me, right? Like they expect me to show up on time, stay the whole time I'm supposed to work, and not be loaded when I do it. And I just can't do that. So I'm getting jobs and I'm getting fired from jobs. So finally, it's just like I'm unemployable. This is a meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous, and I love Alcoholics Anonymous. It saved my life, but there's more to my story than alcohol. And that more to my story other than alcohol led me down this road of I was just a flat-out criminal. And that's what I became. I just became a criminal, stealing cars, stealing motorcycles, robbing houses, storage units, whatever. Anyway, so that's when the arrests started piling up. I came back to Arizona, and that's what happened. And so then this is when I got put on probation in 1993, and I got off probation in 2007. So every day from 1993 until 2007, I was either on probation or locked up or a combination of the two, every single day in that 14-year period. So I had a probation officer who wasn't amused with me. We didn't see eye to eye on a lot of stuff. Again, unrealistic expectations, right? Like he expected me to show up for my appointments with him, he expected me to pay my probation fees, and he expected me to give clean UAs, all of which I was incapable of doing. So we didn't see eye to eye, really. So in August of 2006, I had gotten out of prison, and I was not getting arrested. I hadn't gotten arrested for a while, but I still was doing everything that I was doing before and still not able to meet this guy's unrealistic expectations of me. So in August of 2006, it was August 8th, and we were playing this little game where he's trying to get a hold of me, and I'm trying to stay a step ahead of him, and I was pretty good at the game. I kind of liked it. He didn't like it so much, but on August 8th of 2006, he got me on the phone. And I don't remember how he got me on the phone. And I was like, fuck. He says, you need to be in here and see me tomorrow, which would be August 9th of 2006. So August 9th of 2006 comes around, and I got sidetracked. I probably got sidetracked polishing the chain on my bicycle, my stolen bicycle with a toothbrush or whatever I was doing, but I forgot. And then I realized it's like 5 o'clock, and I'm like, oh shit, I was supposed to go see my probation officer. So I get on this stolen bicycle, and I drive over to the probation office. As I get there, the girl who works behind the desk is coming out, and I'm like, yo, is Kit in there? She's like, no, everybody's gone. You're going to have to come back tomorrow. So I show back up there on August 10th, 2006. And I go into his office, and I'm just going to talk my way out of it one more time. Like I would talk in circles until I confuse people to where they're just like, okay, whatever, just stop talking. And I was just going to go talk my way out of it one more time. And I went into his office, and what came out of my mouth was, I can't stop getting loaded on my own, and I need help. And I absolutely didn't intend to say that. I didn't go in there to say that. And in fact, I remember trying to stop myself from saying that as I was saying that. Turns out if I had shown up the day before like I was supposed to, I wouldn't have made it past the front door. He had cops there that were going to take me into custody and send me back to prison for 8 years. So God does for us what we can't do for ourselves, I guess. I don't know. But anyway, so that was August 10th. He says, I'll give you till Tuesday to be in a treatment center. If you're not in a treatment center by Tuesday, you're going back to prison for 8 years. So I started calling around to treatment centers, and they were all saying crazy things on the phone to me, like, how much money do you have? What insurance do you have? I'm like, pfft. And I finally got a hold of the Salvation Army, and they were exactly what I was looking for in a treatment center. They were free. And they're like, yeah, just come on down and, be here early, we'll let you in. And he gave me till Tuesday, but I'm an overachiever, so I showed up on Monday. August 14th, 2006, I rang the buzzer to the Salvation Army to go in there. When I was talking to them on the phone, a couple pieces of information that they left out was, A, it's a 6-month program. Thought that was quite excessive. But I thought I was smart enough to probably knock it out in 3. But with the big part that they told me, they didn't tell me, was that I needed to give a clean UA to get in there. And my point was, if I could give a clean UA, I wouldn't need your services, right? Like my whole trouble in life right now is that my probation officer is giving me a hard time because I can't give a clean UA. If I could give clean UAs, I wouldn't need this. Anyway, there was the manager's name was Gary. He had me pee in a cup, and it came back not clean. And I'll never forget him sitting there, and he's looking at this thing. He looks at me. He looks at this thing. He looks at me. He looks at this thing. He says, I don't know why I'm going to do this. I've never done this before, but I'm going to take a chance on you, and I'm going to let you in. And I remember thinking to myself, this poor bastard. It's just another person in a long line of people that's going to take a chance on me and be let down. But what came out of my mouth was, thank you very much. And they let me in. And the craziest thing happened. You guys showed up. Every night, Alcoholics Anonymous showed up. Showed up to the Salvation Army. Guys that have had a spiritual experience and a spiritual awakening as the result of these steps have recovered from a seemingly hopeless state of mind and body and are willing to pass this on to some degenerate like me. And they would come in and they would be carrying big books of Alcoholics Anonymous, and they'd be laughing and they'd be smiling and kind of pissing me off a little bit with all the laughing and the smiling. Like I didn't know what was so funny or so amusing. Like I'm in the Salvation Army with 120 dudes. Like this sucks. But they came in and they started to share their stories, and they started talking about doing the things that I had done and getting in trouble the way that I had gotten in trouble and hurting the people that they cared about and the people that cared about them the way that I hurt the people in my life. And then they would say something like, thanks to the program of Alcoholics Anonymous or the 12 steps or a God that I found through the 12 steps, I don't have to live that way anymore. Now, I got sent to Alcoholics Anonymous. Like I told you, I got arrested for the first time when I was 17 years old for drunken disorderly conduct. At that point, a judge suggested I come see you guys. And I'm 17 years old coming into Alcoholics Anonymous, sitting in the back, and a buddy of mine calls it the shoe department, where all the slippers, loafers, flip-flops, and heels sit. And I would come in, and I would come in late, and I'd put my slip in the thing, and I'd judge everybody in the room, and I'd get my slip, and I would leave, and that was that. So I got sent to Alcoholics Anonymous for the first time when I was 17. I got sober when I was 40. And in that 23-year period, I've been in and out of these rooms, I can't even tell you how many times, for years. And these guys were saying, thanks to the program of Alcoholics Anonymous, I don't have to live that way anymore. And I heard that. And I know for a fact that in those 23 years, other people were saying that, but I was unable or unwilling to hear it for whatever reason. But at this time, I was able and willing to hear it. After 30 days, they started letting us go to meetings outside, and I would walk down the street, and I'd go to a meeting hall down there. Same thing, guys and girls would get up to the podium, getting in trouble, hurting people, doing the things that I've been doing, living the way that I've been living, thanks to the program of 12 Steps. And God, I don't have to live that way anymore. And I started for the first time thinking, wow, maybe. Because I don't know about you guys, but on the bottom of page 25 in this book, it says, we had but two alternatives. One is to go on to the bitter end, blotting out the consciousness of our intolerable situation as best we could, and the other is to accept spiritual help. And by the time I showed up here, I had resigned myself to the fact that I was going on to the bitter end, blotting out the consciousness of my intolerable situation as best I could, and I was eventually just going to die alone, in prison, not in prison, whatever. And I had made peace with that fact. I knew nothing about option two, right? I knew nothing about the possibility of spiritual help. You guys offered me that, right? These people that came into the Salvation Army, these people that were down at 4848 when I got there, offered me option two. There was a guy down there one Tuesday night sharing his story. Now I was identifying with it, and I asked him if he would sponsor me, and he agreed. And he told me, we'll start meeting down here on Saturdays. And so when I left, he says, meet me down here on Saturday. I said, are you going to come pick me up? He says, no. I said, well, I'm in the Salvation Army. I don't have a car. I don't have a bike. He's like, I don't care. Meet me down here on Saturday. I said, well, you know, it's a little inconvenient. He said, if I had booze and you wanted it, you'd figure out a way to get down here. What I got's way better than booze. Figure out a way to get down here. So every Saturday, I would walk down to the Salvation Army. And he and I got together, and we started reading this book together. And if you're new, make no mistake about it. The program of Alcoholics Anonymous is the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous as they're outlined in this book. That is the program. What we do at these meetings, what we do at the roundups and the conventions and the conferences and all that, and the bowling and the softball and the kickball, that's the fellowship of Alcoholics Anonymous. And I need them both. I need them both, but I will not stay sober for any length of time without the program of Alcoholics Anonymous. And so we started reading this book, and we started getting into the program of Alcoholics Anonymous. I started working these steps straight out of this book, and when it said to read, we read. When it said to write, we wrote. When it said to pray, we prayed. When it said to talk, we talked. And people told me all the time, hey, quit drinking, you'll feel better, you know? And I quit drinking, and before we got into this, like, yeah, I felt pain better, I felt anger better, I felt resentment better, I felt anxiety better, I felt it all better, and I didn't have anything to pour on top of it to make it go away. That's what this did. This is what made it go away. And I started working these steps like my life depended on it, because it did. And I had no idea when I checked into the Salvation Army that my life depended on it, right? And the more I read in this book and the more I saw myself in here, the more I realized, like, this is me. And my life depends on this deal. And my life today still depends on this deal as much as it ever did. You know, life gets pretty good, you know, but shit happens. I need this deal, I need this program, and I still need the fellowship. And I'm so grateful for it. You know, I got to the amends part of this deal. Well, for the first time, you know, I did a 4-step. Like I said before, I'm an overachiever. So I read ahead in the book, and I saw the little example that they have with Mr. Brown, the wife, you know, and all this stuff, and I'm like, oh my God, like, I can't wait to do this. Like, I can't wait, because I'm in the Salvation Army, and everybody's walking around saying, oh my God, I hate the 4-step. The 4-step sucks. Don't ever do a 4-step. And I realized today that taking recovery advice from other people in rehab is kind of similar to getting legal advice from other prisoners in prison, right? It's probably not the best advice you're going to get. So, but I'm sitting there and I'm reading it, and I see these 3 columns, and I can't wait to write it down, because my thinking is, I get to write down everybody that ever did me wrong, and I get to write down what they did to me and how it hurt my little feelings, and then I get to go share it with somebody, and finally, somebody is going to understand how poorly I have been treated my whole life, and why I've done the things that I do. And I can't wait for somebody to finally understand me. I didn't keep reading to the part to where it says we resolutely look for our own mistakes. Where were we wrong? But my sponsor was real quick to help me find that, right? But for the first time in my life, first time ever in my life, I was able to hold that mirror up and take a look. Take a look at me and how I have been the cause of all this shit in my life. You know, it wasn't my wife's fault. It wasn't my parents' fault. The police weren't out to get me. You know, they weren't waiting for me all the time, like trying to track. Like they've never bothered me since. You know, it wasn't all these other people's fault. You know, it was mine. When I was 11 years old, me and God had a situation. And when I was 11 years old, in my mind, God let me down. So we kind of just parted ways. You know, we just kind of parted ways. And so when I got here, I believed in God. I just didn't believe God really wanted anything to do with me. You know, like I heard people all the time say, pray to God, God answers prayers. And I was sure that you were praying to God and God was answering your prayers, but he sure didn't answer mine in June of 1977. But I started going through this stuff, and I blame God for a lot of my stuff when I got here. But I finally realized, working this fourth step and a fifth step specifically, that I was the cause. You know, selfishness and self-centeredness, that is the root of our troubles. And I was I was the cause of all my troubles. And for the first time, I was able to see that, and it was huge. Like it went. This is the thing. If you guys all were the cause of my troubles, and I wanted my troubles to go away, you guys are all going to have to change. And from the looks of you, it doesn't look like you guys are going to change anytime soon, right? So the fact is that if I'm the cause of my trouble, the only thing that has to change is me. I don't have to wait for anybody else to change. Like I'm the only one that needs to change. And then I was able to, you know, start asking God in my morning prayer and meditation to take away these character defects that my sponsor so lovingly presented me with an extensive list of. And then I got to make my amends, and there's some, there's some amends that, like the financial amends, whatever, you know, like I remember I owed like $90,000 in all kinds of financial amends, and I remember telling my sponsor, he says, you're going to have to pay that back. I'm like, you have any idea how old I'll be by the time I pay that back? He says, you'd be exactly the same age you'd be if you didn't pay it back. And here I am, and I don't have any financial amends left. But there's, you know, that wife and 3 kids was tough. You know, I dragged them through the mud. Like I didn't even get into half the stuff that I did. But let's just say I was not a good husband, and let's just say I was not a good father when I was around. Prior to, I got sober in August of 2006. April of 2006, I was living in a house that had been, I was squatting. And my then ex-wife would come over and like check on me still, you know, after all the stuff I put her through. She would come over and check on me and just always wanted the best for me. She came over, she found some extracurricular things that I had. She was trying to flush it down the toilet. I knocked the door off the hinges and basically beat her up to get this back from her before she flushed it down the toilet. And she went home looking like she had been beaten up. My son at the time was 16, 17, he was driving. So she got home, he saw her, he got in his car, he came over. I was maybe $135, soaking wet, and he was he was a quarterback on the varsity football team. And he comes over and he wants a fight, and you know, standing up for his mom like he should be. And I just told him, like, look, like you don't want to do this. He had some, you know, F you this, F that, F you, I'm never talking to you again, blah, 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 blah. Ex-wife called me and told me that as far as she and the kids were concerned, I was dead, and that I would be better off to them if I was dead so that they could collect a Social Security check every month. fast forward to August of 2006, I get sober. My son's, like I said, the football. I would go to his games, and I would have to go sit on the visitor side and watch. Like, I couldn't even go sit on the home teams. Like, I would have to go sit with the visitors, and they were wondering why I kept cheering for the wrong team, but whatever. But I would go watch his games, and he never even knew I was there. So when it came time to make my amends, you know, my daughter Shaylin, she was the first one, and she was like, still to this day, she thinks that I walk on water, right? And she always has. And so that was an easy amends, and she and I were good. Made my amends to my youngest daughter. Little while after that, she was a little hesitant, and my son, he wouldn't hear it. He wouldn't hear it. Made my amends to my ex-wife. And you know, in the part of the amends where you say, well, what can I do to make this right? And most people, like, you know, like my parents, are like, oh, just keep doing what you're doing, stay sober, like. But I knew she was going to have something to say. And I said, what can I do to make this right? And she says, you know what? I'll tell you what you can do. I'm like, figured. She said, I bought this big house thinking that we were going to one day be a family, and you screwed it up. And I'm out here every weekend mowing this damn lawn. You can start mowing this lawn on the weekends. So every Saturday from the Salvation Army, I'd take a bus 2.5 hours up to Scottsdale, mow the lawn, take a bus 2.5 hours back to the Salvation Army every Saturday. After I got out of the Salvation Army, every Saturday I was over there. I did that for like 2.5 years, and she finally sold that house and got a townhouse where the HOA took care of the lawn, so I was off the hook. But for 2.5 years, you know, and then when I made my amends to my kids, I told them, look, I've forfeited the right to be your dad. I've forfeited the right to tell you, you know, anything. But I can tell you this, from now to the day I die, if there's ever anything I can do to make your life easier, you just tell me, and if I'm able to do it, it's done. And I've been doing that ever since. 3 years sober, I had a conversation with my sponsor, and I said, I think I'm just going to give up on ever having a relationship with TJ as my son. I think I'm just going to give up on ever having a relationship with TJ. I said, he doesn't want anything to do with me, and my sponsor says, look, I can't tell you if you're ever going to have a relationship with him or not, but I can tell you if you give up now, you're never going to. But if you keep being consistent in what you do and keep being consistent in what you say, you never know what God can do. It could have been more than 6 months later. I was driving. My ex-wife calls and says, hey, TJ's car's broke down. Can you go help him? And I said, well, every time I'm around, he wants to fight me. So I said, where's he at? She says, where are you? I said, I'm at Millen University. I said, where's he? She's like, he's broke down at Millen University by the ASU bookstore. I said, well, call him and ask him if it's okay if I come by there. She calls me back. He said, yeah. Now, anybody that knows me knows that I know absolutely nothing about cars. Like, I know you fill it up with gas, and I know you take it somewhere every once in a while, tell some guy to change the oil, and then, that's it, right? That's about the extent of what I know about cars. So I show up at the ASU bookstore. He's standing out there with his car. I'm like, looks broke. And but we called a tow truck, and we had 2 hours while we were waiting for this damn tow truck. And God put us in the same place at the same time with 2 hours. And I'll never forget, we talked about snowboarding. I remember we talked about snowboarding. I remember we talked about basketball. But the thing I remember most is that we laughed a couple times together, right? And then the tow truck pulled up, and he got in the tow truck and left, and may or may not have cried a little bit. Called my sponsor and told him what just happened, and he's like, that's so awesome, man. That's like the beginning of the healing. And I was 3.5 years sober. At 8 years sober, I got remarried, and my son was the best man at my wedding. And stood there in front of 200 of my friends and made a toast and told everybody there that I'm his best friend, right? That's what Alcoholics Anonymous does. That's what Alcoholics Anonymous can do. I destroy relationships. I hurt people that care about me. I drag people through the mud, right? Alcoholics Anonymous restores those relationships. The forward to the 12 and 12 says, AA's 12 steps are a set of principles, spiritual in their nature, which, when practiced as a way of life, can expel the obsession to drink and enable the sufferer to become happily and usefully whole. And I can tell you that that's exactly my story. That's exactly what happened to me. The 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous has enabled me to become happily and usefully whole, I've recovered from a seemingly hopeless state of mind and body as a result of a spiritual experience that I got from working those 12 steps. So real quick, back in April of 2012, I guess it was, my grandmother died. And this is the this is the wife of my grandfather who died that I drank my way through his funeral. My mom's mom died. And so I get on a plane with my mom. I'm like, I'm going to go back there. I'm going to support my mom. Like it's not going to be about me. My mom lost her mom. I lost my grandma, but that was my mom's mom, and I'm going to go back there. And so I go back there with my mom, and the family asked me to be a pallbearer in the funeral. I was like, you remember the last time? And they're like, yeah, we remember the last time, but we also see you today. And I'd be honored to do it. And I showed up, and I was a pallbearer in my grandmother's funeral. That's what this deal is. That's what Alcoholics Anonymous is. When I was, I think, third grade, and I don't know, I guess I know why, because I just did stuff like this for the hell of it. But when I was in third grade, I stole a bunch of chairs from my elementary school, like stackable chairs, and took them back into the woods where me and my buddies did all this. That was our hangout, and we needed stuff to sit on. That's probably why I stole the chairs. But I stole a bunch of stackable chairs from my elementary school in third grade. So I get them back there, and one tips over, and I look at the bottom of it, and there's like a little metal tag on it. It says, property of Stackpole Elementary School with a serial number on it. And first thing I thought, in third grade, is, oh man, I'm going to go to jail. Right? Fast forward some years, it dawns on me that every single thing in my life should be able to be flipped upside down and say property of Alcoholics Anonymous. There is nothing in my life that I have or nothing in my life that I am that is not a direct result of Alcoholics Anonymous. I am so grateful beyond words for this program. I sponsor guys, I have a home group, I have service commitments, and it doesn't matter how many guys I sponsor and how many service commitments I have, and if I do it from now till I'm 147 years old, I'll never be able to repay Alcoholics Anonymous for the life that I've been given. But I can tell you that I'm sure as hell going to try. Thank you very much.